The air inside the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio was buzzing with anticipation. Word had spread like wildfire that Bruce Willis, the enigmatic and often elusive action star, was set to make a rare live appearance. It was a coup for the show. Bruce hadn't done a major interview in over a year, and fans were desperate for an update. No one could have guessed just how unpredictable the evening would become. Before we dive into this dramatic confrontation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a Hollywood twist like this one. Behind the scenes, everything seemed to be in motion. Stagehands adjusted lighting, the band rehearsed snippets of familiar action movie themes, and the energy in the green room was electric. But despite the surface excitement, a storm was already brewing beneath it all. Bruce Willis arrived at the studio precisely at 5:45 p.m., 15 minutes ahead of schedule. Dressed in a sharp grey suit and dark sunglasses, he stepped out of a sleek black SUV and nodded silently to the waiting crew. His longtime assistant, Kenny Parks, followed close behind, holding a thick envelope and an iPad. Laura Quinn, the show's executive producer, greeted Bruce with a carefully rehearsed smile. She had worked with countless celebrities over the years, but there was something different about Bruce, an unpredictable weight that filled the room when he entered. "Mr. Willis," she said, extending her hand, "we're honored to have you." Bruce gave a half smile, shook her hand and said quietly, "Let's keep it smooth tonight." Inside the envelope Kenny handed over were a list of talking points and a firm list of off-limit topics. No questions about Bruce's health, no jokes about his aging action career, and absolutely nothing about the recent rumors regarding his retirement. Laura skimmed the list, her stomach tightening. She had already gone over tonight's script with Jimmy. Some of these topics were very much included. Meanwhile, Jimmy Kimmel was in his dressing room, thumbing through cue cards with a mischievous grin. He loved pushing boundaries, loved the moments when a guest squirmed a bit on air. It made for great TV. But Laura knew that Bruce wasn't the kind of star who played along for laughs. Tensions rose further when Bruce passed by the band's rehearsal and heard them practicing a jazzy rendition of "Yippee-ki-yay," the infamous catchphrase from his die-hard days. He stopped, stared for a moment, then turned sharply toward Kenny. "Tell them not to play that, not tonight." Backstage, the production team exchanged uneasy glances. Bruce was in no mood for nostalgia or jokes. He looked tired, his eyes distant, his jaw clenched. Yet there was still a flicker of charm behind his sunglasses. Maybe, just maybe, this interview would go smoothly if everyone played their part. At 6:58 p.m., the audience was seated and roaring with applause. Jimmy stood behind the curtain, mic clipped, makeup touched up, and his signature smirk in place. "You ready for this?" he asked one of the producers. "As ready as we'll ever be," the producer replied, unsure if she meant herself or Jimmy. The music swelled, the lights flashed, the voiceover boomed, "Ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Willis." As Bruce stepped onto the stage, applause thundered through the studio. He waved, took his seat, and exchanged a brisk nod with Jimmy. The cameras zoomed in, and the world leaned in to watch what was supposed to be a celebratory conversation. But instead, something else entirely was about to unfold. Even before the interview began, the signs were clear. This night wasn't going to follow the usual late-night formula. Hours earlier, Bruce had arrived with a quiet intensity that unsettled the crew. It wasn't arrogance, it was precision. Every move he made, every word he spoke was calculated, and that calculation extended to the list of banned topics he had handed to Laura Quinn, the executive producer. At the top of the list, underlined twice, was no discussion of health or retirement. But Jimmy Kimmel had other plans. As the final script was prepared in the control room, Jimmy sat with his head writer, flipping through cue cards. One in particular made him laugh, a joke about Bruce being the last VHS-era action star still running on tape. The writers had worked hard to make the segment funny without being cruel, but Jimmy's comedic instincts were sharp and sometimes unrelenting. "Do you think he'll get mad?" the writer asked. Jimmy shrugged. "If he doesn't like it, he can make a face. That's part of the fun." Meanwhile, Laura tried to intercept. She approached Jimmy's dressing room, holding Bruce's envelope of restricted topics. "Jimmy, we need to talk." Bruce made it clear, no jokes about his retirement, his health, or the die-hard stuff. Jimmy looked up. "So we can't talk about the last 30 years of his life." "Jimmy, I'm serious. He's on edge. I had to cut 3 questions during rehearsal already." Jimmy rubbed his face. "Laura, if we start letting the guests dictate every word, what's left of the show?" Laura knew she was losing ground. She had seen this before. When Jimmy felt cornered, he pushed harder. As the crew finalized the stage setup, Bruce sat in the makeup chair, stone-faced. He sipped on black coffee while his assistant Kenny stood nearby, scrolling on his iPad. Then, a whisper drifted through the room, a junior producer talking a bit too loud to a makeup artist. "He's definitely going to bring up the retirement rumors." Bruce's eyes locked onto the mirror. His expression didn't change, but the tension in his shoulders was unmistakable. He stood up abruptly. "Kenny, let's take a walk." Out in the hallway, Bruce paced like a caged animal. Kenny tried to calm him. "You don't have to do this, Bruce. We can cancel. You owe them nothing." Bruce shook his head. "No, I gave my word. But if he crosses the line, I walk." Simple as that. Backstage, Laura was scrambling. She tried once more to talk to Jimmy. "Please just skip that one card. If you do, this whole thing could be amazing. If you don't, it could get ugly." Jimmy's jaw clenched, but he nodded. "I'll think about it." The studio audience was ushered in shortly after. The band played upbeat tunes. Jimmy warmed up the crowd with some quick jokes and stories, all smiles, but inside he was debating. The joke was funny. The reaction would be priceless. Was it worth the risk? 6:59 p.m. Bruce waited behind the curtain, arms crossed. Laura gave him the final cue. "Ready?" Bruce adjusted his cufflinks, gave a short nod, and stepped forward. The curtain lifted. The lights exploded into brilliance. Jimmy stood center stage, grinning. "Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the one, the only Bruce Willis." Thunderous applause. Fans stood cheering. Bruce walked out with slow confidence, nodded once to Jimmy, and sat. The two exchanged a brief handshake. Bruce's smile never quite reached his eyes. The show had officially begun, but neither man knew just how far it would go off the rails. From the moment Bruce settled into his chair, the vibe was off. The usual late-night chatter, the laughs, the playful back and forth, just wasn't landing. Jimmy opened with a joke about Bruce's steely presence, but Bruce only nodded. No smile, no laugh, just a blank, cool stare that made the audience shift in their seats. Jimmy pivoted. "So, Bruce, you've been off the radar for a while. What have you been up to?" "Living," Bruce replied simply. A beat of silence followed. Jimmy chuckled awkwardly. "Well, that's good to hear. I mean, we've missed you out there." Bruce tilted his head. "Yeah? That what this is?" Jimmy blinked, caught off guard. "Of course. I mean, you're a legend." You walk into a room and people still hear explosions. A few people in the audience laughed, but Bruce didn't. He looked down at his lap, then back at Jimmy. "Explosions, huh?" Jimmy felt it slipping. He flipped to a safer card. "Let's talk about your upcoming project. You've got a new film coming out next month, Dark Horizon. How was that shoot?" Bruce softened slightly. "That one was real work. No green screens, just dust and blood. Felt like the old days." Jimmy saw an opening and went for it. "The old days? You mean back when action movies had real grit? Like Die Hard?" The second the title left Jimmy's lips, Bruce's face closed off completely. Laura Quinn, watching from behind the cameras, squeezed her headset. Jimmy caught himself. "I mean, sorry. Dark Horizon feels like that kind of throwback. That's what I meant." Bruce leaned forward slightly, his voice low but unmistakably sharp. "You said you weren't going to go there." Jimmy tried to laugh it off. "I didn't mean to. Just, look, I think we all love Die Hard. I mean, come on, yippee-ki-yay? That's classic." The audience laughed nervously, but Bruce didn't. "I'm not here to be a punchline, Jimmy." The laughter stopped. Jimmy raised his hands, palms out. "Hey, I wasn't trying to make you a punchline. I'm just doing the show. We joke, we talk, we reminisce. That's the format." Bruce shook his head slowly. You want format? Here's a format. Celebrity sits in the chair, host pokes him, gets a viral clip. That what this is?" Jimmy's smile faltered. "Bruce, come on, let's not do this." Bruce reached down, unclipped his mic. The sound engineer immediately tried to intervene, but Bruce waved him off. "I told your people, no health talk, no retirement jokes, no Die Hard. You knew." Jimmy looked stunned. "We were just talking." Bruce stood. "No, you were baiting. This isn't an interview." "It's a setup." Laura rushed onto the stage, signaling the band to play off the tension. Cameras cut to a wide shot as the stage lights dimmed slightly. The director called for an emergency break. The feed cut to commercial. In the studio, chaos erupted. The audience was ushered out. Staff scrambled. Jimmy stood frozen at center stage, still holding the cue cards. In the wings, Bruce grabbed his coat and walked out, Kenny trailing behind him, phone already buzzing with alerts. He didn't say another word. Backstage, someone had left a camera rolling. The footage would later leak online, showing Bruce storming out and Jimmy saying to no one in particular, "What the hell just happened?" What happened was a line had been crossed, and now it was about to explode far beyond the walls of the studio. The clip hit the internet less than an hour after it happened. A grainy, slightly tilted video from someone backstage captured the moment Bruce Willis tore off his microphone and left the stage of Jimmy Kimmel Live with stormy intensity. By midnight, Bruce vs. Kimmel was trending across every major social platform. At first, no one knew what had truly happened. The televised portion had cut to commercial, and when the show returned, Jimmy offered a vague, awkward smile and a casual, "Well, that was something." He moved on to the next guest, but the energy had flatlined. Backstage, Laura Quinn sat in the control room, her headset tossed onto the desk, eyes unfocused. The live audience was gone, and crew members whispered in corners. She knew exactly how this would spiral, and spiral it did. By the next morning, entertainment sites exploded with headlines. Bruce Willis storms off Kimmel's set. What made the star snap? Kimmel crosses the line? Fans slam host after awkward interview. The action star's last stand was Bruce provoked. Bruce's publicist issued a carefully worded statement that afternoon. Mr. Willis attended Jimmy Kimmel Live, in good faith, under the agreement that certain personal topics would remain off limits. Unfortunately, that agreement was not honored. Mr. Willis chooses to focus on his upcoming work and appreciates the support of his fans. It was concise, but the undertone was clear. Bruce felt ambushed. Jimmy's response, on the other hand, was less calculated. He opened the next night's monologue by addressing the elephant in the room. "Look, we had Bruce Willis on last night. Things got tense. I guess the guy doesn't want to talk about being a legendary movie star. Who knew?" The audience chuckled, but the backlash was swift. Across social media, comments poured in, some defending Jimmy's right to ask questions, but many accusing him of humiliating a respected actor facing personal struggles. Bruce is a legend. You don't ambush him for views. Jimmy Kimmel owes him a real apology, not a punchline. I used to love Kimmel, but that was disrespectful. Then came the revelations. A former writer from the show anonymously told a gossip blog that Jimmy had seen Bruce's restriction list and laughed. He said we should lean into it. He wanted the sparks, said it'd be good for ratings. The firestorm doubled overnight. Laura Quinn, exhausted and disillusioned, quietly resigned 3 days later. In her resignation email, she wrote, "When we start treating real people like viral opportunities, we've already lost." Behind closed doors, ABC executives held emergency meetings. They weren't planning to cancel the show, but damage control was needed. Jimmy was told to take a softer tone moving forward and to consider a real statement about the Willis interview. Meanwhile, Bruce disappeared from the public eye entirely. Paparazzi tried to track him down. He was spotted leaving his home in Brentwood once, but otherwise he was silent. No interviews, no press, just quiet. The industry took notice. Other talk show hosts, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, even Graham Norton, altered their upcoming guest segments. removing potentially sensitive jokes and focusing on more controlled conversations. There was a shift in the air. Something had broken. The moment between Bruce and Jimmy wasn't just a celebrity spat. It became a cultural flashpoint about boundaries, respect, and the invisible lines between entertainment and exploitation. For many, Bruce's walk-off wasn't seen as a meltdown. It was seen as defiance. And that defiance was resonating far beyond Hollywood. 2 months later, Bruce Willis finally broke his silence. Not on television, not in a press release, but on a low-key podcast hosted by a longtime friend and retired actor, Marcus Lang. The episode opened without fanfare. No intro music, no dramatics, just Bruce's unmistakable voice, calm and clear. "I didn't walk off because of a joke," he began. "I walked off because I was tired of being handled like a headline instead of a human." The podcast went viral within hours. Bruce spoke with more vulnerability than the public had seen in years. He confirmed ongoing health issues, not in detail, but enough to explain why he'd stepped away from Hollywood. He admitted that he had come to Jimmy Kimmel Live, hoping for a genuine conversation, maybe even a quiet farewell, but instead he felt trapped. "There's a difference between laughter and mockery," he said. "One makes you feel included, the other makes you want to disappear." The internet reacted swiftly, and this time it was overwhelmingly in Bruce's favor. Clips from the podcast were shared widely. Actors like Tom Hanks, Viola Davis, and even Dwayne Johnson posted supportive messages, praising Bruce for his honesty and strength. Jimmy Kimmel, watching the media tide turn, realized something had to change. That Friday, he opened his show with an uncharacteristically serious monologue. "I want to take a moment to talk about something important. A few weeks ago, Bruce Willis walked off this stage, and at the time I handled it with a joke. I thought I was doing my job, but I wasn't listening, and that's on me." He paused, visibly emotional. "I want to say directly to Bruce, if you're watching, I'm sorry. Not just for the joke, but for not giving you the space and respect you deserved." The audience applauded. It was a rare moment of humility in late-night television, but perhaps more importantly, Jimmy's words sparked a broader conversation within the entertainment industry. Talk shows began reassessing their approach to celebrity interviews. More emphasis was placed on empathy, on letting guests lead the narrative rather than mining them for punchlines. A new standard began to emerge, one that recognized the emotional toll fame can exact and the humanity behind every face on the screen. As for Bruce, he remained mostly out of the spotlight. But the podcast appearance had given him something more powerful than a promotional slot. It gave him a voice on his own terms. He appeared again 6 months later at a film tribute event, not to promote but to honor others. He took the stage slowly, smiled at the standing ovation, and delivered a short, heartfelt message. "Sometimes walking away isn't quitting. Sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do," the crowd erupted. That single line became immortalized online, quoted across social media, printed on posters, even echoed in motivational speeches. It was no longer just about the Kimmel incident. It had become something more, an anthem for anyone who had ever been pushed to the edge and decided to take back their dignity. In the end, Bruce Willis didn't just walk off a talk show. He walked into a legacy far deeper than his film roles could ever capture. He reminded the world that even in a business built on performance, there's nothing more powerful than being real. If you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes showdown, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the video on your screen now to watch another jaw-dropping Hollywood moment.